Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's having a lovely Wednesday. I'm going to give a minute or so to let a few more people join, and then we will get started for this evening. All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Carmen, and I'm the training coordinator at the Temple Small Business Development Center. The Temple SBDC helps small businesses start and grow. We provide free one-on-one counseling and a variety of low to no cost webinars, and we are proud to be a part of the nationally accredited network of SBDCs with over 1,000 centers across the United States. You have joined us today for our second webinar in the Pivoting to Procurement series, Government Contracting Types. A copy of tonight's PowerPoint presentation will be sent out to all attendees in a follow-up email. And while all attendees have been muted, we encourage you to post any questions in the chat or Q&A. And just a heads up, we will be addressing all these questions at the conclusion of the webinar. Right on my screen right now, you can just see all of the sessions that we are doing in this series. I will send a link in the chat to registration for future sessions. And then this is kind of what I went over. We would love for you all to introduce yourselves if you feel comfortable in the chat. Tell us about your business. Let everyone know that you are here. And like I mentioned earlier, if you have a question, please just type it in the Q&A or chat. And now I will turn the floor over to David.
All right, thank you, Carmen. Good afternoon, everybody. Great to be here today. As Carmen said, my name is Dave Pinkowski. I'm a business opportunity specialist with the Western Pennsylvania District Office of the U.S. Small Business Administration. So give me 1 second here to get my slides up, and we will go ahead and get rolling. All right, Carmen, are you seeing that?
Yes, you are all good.
Okay, got the regular view there, not the presenter view?
Yes.
All righty, excellent. Great. I am going to go ahead and just turn off my camera, stop the video just for the presentation, and then I will hop back on during the Q&A a little later on. So again, thank you so much for taking the time today to join us. I was very excited whenever Temple reached out and asked if I'd be able to help out with this session today. As a business opportunity specialist with the Small Business Administration, we are the federal government's small business government contracting experts. So what that means is we assist small businesses in breaking into the federal marketplace. So just to give you a little bit of background on our agency before we jump into the full presentation here. Let's get the click there. All right. We are, again, an actual federal agency falling under the executive branch of the federal government, been around since 1953. And our mission is really to help small businesses grow, start, expand, recover, no matter where you are in your business life cycle. Obviously, our headquarters is in Washington, D.C. We have 10 regional offices and 68 district offices all across the country. All states have at least one district office. Pennsylvania, we actually have 2. Just due to the nature of how much land mass we have in PA, we're kind of split right down the middle. The Eastern Pennsylvania office, where obviously Temple is located, and I'm sure many of you, covers the 40 counties of Eastern Pennsylvania. My office covers the 27 counties of Western PA. So I'm just stepping in today just to kind of help out the Eastern office a little bit. Our former BOS was not able to be here today from the Eastern PA office, so I got asked if I could step in and just kind of help out, and I'm very happy to do that. And your district director in your area is Steve Dixell. And I have a lot of links at the end, just a general resource slide with all the different places you can go and how to get in touch with the Eastern PA office to get the assistance you need once we finish up with today's presentation. So we'll just kind of jump right in. Now, types of federal contracts. Learning objectives for today, just have a couple of things. Just want everybody to understand the types of contracts and solicitations used by the government. And I can tell you we are going to stick just with the most common types. I'm not going to do a real deep, crazy dive and really get into the weeds with all of the different ways the federal government buys things, because believe me, there is a lot. We have about 23 different contracting processes, and many of those processes can easily take a multi-hour, multi-day session in and of themselves. So we have 45 minutes today or so where I'm going to do the presentation, keep it real nice, real kind of general and easy to understand, kind of top level, and then we'll kind of go from from there as you kind of branch out and get into contracting. Obviously, things will get a little more advanced, and we can do some of the deep dive stuff a little later on. But we want to understand the different types of contracts and solicitations that are most commonly used by the government. And then I'm going to go over a couple things about how to respond to these things. You can know all this great stuff and understand all the types of contracts and everything we have, but how do you actually get one of them? What are the steps you have to take? So I do like to talk about that, because you really can't talk about the types of contracts without understanding the solicitation portion, which is what we use to actually solicit work or potential vendors to do work for us to get awarded a contract. So they kind of go hand in hand. So first things first, just like to mention the expectations. There's a lot of companies out there that aspire to do government contracting work, but there's a lot of them, unfortunately, that just don't make the cut. Some people just aren't qualified. Some aren't competitive enough. Government contracting in and of itself is a very competitive marketplace. We have some clients that come to us, and honestly, they talk to us for an hour or two, or we have a meeting with them and we go over all this crazy stuff. And sometimes they just throw their hands up and they're like, you know what, this is nuts. I'm not interested in this. Totally get it. It can be incredibly daunting and intimidating when you're first breaking into it, which again is another reason why we like to keep things general, break it down into small pieces, and kind of spoon feed it to you. Understand that working with the federal government is absolutely a marathon. It is not a sprint, but it is something that is highly doable and can definitely be lucrative for you. It's a great revenue stream for a lot of our small business clients to get into, separate from the commercial sector, just because there's always opportunities in the federal marketplace. And we're even mostly recession proof in a lot of cases. A great example was during the COVID-19 pandemic that I can give you. We had many of our clients that were already in the government pipeline, already had government contracts in place. They were able to sustain their companies very, very well during the pandemic because they had that other revenue stream of public sector work to sustain them. They didn't have to worry so much about a lot of their commercial sector work, tanking and not having the opportunities they had there for however long. Because the example I always kind of use with that is it makes sense. Our Department of Defense does not shut down just because the pandemic happened. In our case at the SBA, we were actually buying extra equipment, more computers. Staffing agencies were helping us onboard new federal employees at SBA to help process those COVID programs, PPP loans, the COVID EIDL program, and things that were available. So we were actually onboarding more people using small business vendors to help us do that. So it can really be a good, lucrative platform and avenue for you to explore. So just don't be intimidated by the process, because it is absolutely doable. And we have a lot of great resources that will help you do that. Our phenomenal partners that are small business development centers like Temple, we have women's business centers, veteran groups, the counseling and things we provide at our district offices. There's a lot of people that are willing and able to help you, kind of navigate these processes. And one of the best things you can do with government contracting is almost kind of approach it sort of like learning another language. You want to just understand the verbiage that goes along with it, the process, and really it's just a matter of aligning your skills and the great work and excellent stuff you do as a small business, and showing yourself in a positive light and presenting those skills to the agency to hopefully win some of those government contracts and awards. Some of the things we hear from vendors a lot of times is sometimes people think it's easy. It's absolutely not. It does take time and effort. They think they can just kind of show up and we're going to hand them a contract. Keep in mind, government contracts are not entitlement programs. These are not grant-funded programs. These are things that we are buying at the federal government that actually help federal employees like myself and our federal agencies, our military, execute their missions on a daily basis. So we need high-quality vendors and suppliers, so always keep that in mind. Performance is something that is huge for us at the federal level. We need people and experts that can execute and help us, like I said, accomplish our work and missions every single day. It's absolutely, though, not impossible. And sometimes people say, oh, this is rigged, or, the big guys grab all the business. And we'll talk about the second one there with as far as the big companies kind of swooping in and taking all the work. That's absolutely not the case. And as far as it being rigged, that's just not something we see at all on the federal level, really, these days. There are multiple teams of people that do these procurements before these things even hit the street and actually administer these contracts. So in order to actually rig a contract would take a very large coordinated effort with a lot of money, just be a ridiculous undertaking. And so it's just not something we see. And do keep in mind that political officials also, they don't have a role in the federal procurement process. The only people that can spend federal money on a federal contract and can authorize it are warranted contracting officers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but do keep that in mind. Again, it's absolutely doable, and about 20,000 small businesses do get their first federal contract every single year. And when I say small, I'm talking about truly small companies, companies that have 1 or 2 people, maybe less than 5 in a lot of cases. I'm not even talking about larger small companies that have a few hundred people or anything like that, but I'm talking about truly small independent companies, sole proprietorships that get government contracts and are very successful. From the government side, we are pretty easy. We're just like any other consumer that's out there every single day looking for quality products and services, reputable vendors, good deliverables, competitive prices, and simplicity. You know, we want to buy things in a manner that makes sense. We don't want to waste taxpayer dollars going through a big, long procurement process for, you know, if we're just buying office equipment or blue pens or something like that, which is why we're going to talk about some of the different types of contracts and sort of where those come into play. But simply put, federal agencies need the best support in the world from the vendors that we hire, because you literally could be supplying some sort of product or service that our military needs, that our warfighters or some other sort of emergency personnel needs, and you know, somebody's life could actually depend on what you're doing and the support you're giving us at the federal level. So it's a pretty big deal, and it's definitely something we take very seriously. So with that, let's go ahead and talk about some of these types of contracts. First thing I always like to show everybody when doing this presentation is take a look at the DAU contracting cone. Now, what this cone is, and I know the screenshot's a little small there, but you can go to the website. I have at the bottom. And again, like Carmen said, we are sending out the slides to everybody, so no worries there. Don't feel like you have to take copious notes or anything like that. But with the DAU contracting code, this cone is actually really useful and it's very easy to navigate. Once you go to it, you can just go to the different tabs and click on those, and it will explain a number of different contracting strategies we use. Like I said, at the federal level, we've got a lot. There's 23 different tabs on here on the outer ring. Then you get into some specialty stuff on the inner ring. Some things fall under what's called the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. However, some agencies actually have the authority to operate outside of the Federal Acquisition Regulations, just due to the unique nature of what they do. And another reason I don't like to do a deep dive into every type of contracting action that we have available at the federal level is, like I said earlier, it's a lot. It'll take way too long. But a lot of times, companies, depending on what you supply, that will kind of dictate what agencies are buying what you sell. So there's a very good chance that 90% of these contracting actions are never going to apply to the majority of you on this call. It just depends, again, on your industry. If you're looking for like research and development opportunities, if you're selling, you know, widgets or commodity type products, off the shelf type items, you know, if you're in a service industry, those are all things that are going to come into play. So when it comes to contracting, don't get overwhelmed. One of the worst things you can do that I tell my clients when they're first looking into this is just don't go to Google and type in federal contracting. You'll end up spending 8 hours going down about 50 different rabbit holes, and you'll want to pull your hair out, okay? So don't do that to yourself. Come to us at the SBA or Temple Partners. You know, we will help you streamline this stuff so that you don't waste your precious time when you could be doing other business just trying to sort through the myriad of stuff we have out there on federal contracting. So definitely check out that DAU contracting code. So as far as the types of federal contracts, I really like to focus on these 5 main types of contracts we use at the federal level. So we have firm fixed price, cost plus contracts, time and material contracts, and then within that is labor hour contracts. So I do have that separately. I'll spend a different slide on that. And then we have what are called IDIQ, or indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. And if you take a look at the little chart there, you'll notice that these are kind of classified according to risk. Now, one of the things at the federal level is, like I said earlier, we're using taxpayer dollars to fund these contracts. And this is something that we take very seriously at the SBA and our contracting officers at our various agencies. At the SBA, not only do we do a lot of research and outreach and assistance to our small businesses, but we actually serve as the watchdog entity for the other federal agencies. So it's our mission and job to help the other agencies meet their small business goals, but then we are responsible for auditing and monitoring their contracts to make sure that our small business clients are getting their fair share of those federal opportunities. So there's a lot that goes into it. So we're very risk adverse whenever we award contracts, because we don't want to waste tax money, and we want those good, high quality performers and suppliers whenever we do award you a contract. So something you'll notice here, firm fixed price contracts tend to have less risk for the government. Time and materials is kind of a split risk, a little bit of government and a little bit more onto the vendor. And then cost reimbursement contracts tend to have more risk for you as the vendor and less risk for the government. I'm going to talk about each of these 5 individually. So, no worries there. Just kind of wanted to go over that and sort of explain that a little bit. So firm fixed price contracts are by far the most common federal contracting type. So in this type of contract, the government agrees to pay the contractor a specific predetermined amount for the product or service. And as I mentioned earlier, it'll have the most risk for you as the contractor, because you're going to be responsible if you go over that amount. So whenever we issue solicitations, though, we will tell you up front what type of contract we intend to award. So you'll know when you first read a solicitation whether or not it's going to be firm fixed price, cost plus, an IDIQ of some sort, like a GWAC or something like that, which we'll talk about in a slide or two. So it's a very easy way to kind of, know what your level of exposure or risk could potentially be. Now, one of the pros of these types of contracts of firm fixed price is the contractor benefits from efficiencies, since the government price is already predetermined and preset. So the more efficient you are, the less overhead or things you have, the less time you have to spend on that contract. You're going to get paid the same amount regardless. That's what was predetermined, pre-negotiated. So that's already built into the contract. The price is the price. You're going to be entitled to that full payment amount as long as you meet the specs for that contract. So again, though, you will be on the hook, though, if you go over that amount. Sometimes what people try to do with the federal government is they offer a really low, dirt cheap price with the idea that they can get awarded a contract, get their foot in the door, and then they're going to get all this other federal work later on. Then they're just going to skyrocket their price and try to gouge the government on future contracts to make up the loss they took on that first one. That's called a buy-in strategy, but it is not something you want to do at the federal level. We absolutely do not want to put anyone out of business. We want this to be a good quality business relationship and partnership for the firm, make sure our agencies get what they need. So don't try to do that. Your price is your price. If you can't be competitive on price, move on to the next contract. We put out thousands of opportunities every single day for all kinds of industries, a lot of the common ones and a lot of really obscure ones. So I always say, live to fight another day, go after something that makes sense to you. As far as a con, the government sets the price that you're obligated to sell your product or service for. So again, if you're in a volatile market or the market prices changes and your expenses go up, typically you may have to absorb the additional cost. And it's not even necessarily that we want to do that to vendors. It's just for the fact that, once we have a contract awarded, that budget is set. So that money that we have for any overages or anything could potentially be reallocated to something else. So we may not even have the money to pay you additional funds, even if we wanted to. So do keep that in mind. That's one of the downsides to federal work, is there is a lot of volatility regardless of what sort of contract you have. So with firm fixed price contracts, you're typically going to see these for commercial supplies and services, long-term commercial contracts, maybe if you're doing like a major system of like a prototype or something for the military, a lot of times those are going to be where you'll see a firm fixed price, something that does not require like a lot of R&D or any research or anything of that nature. Now that's different, obviously, than a cost plus contract. So in this type of scenario with the cost plus, and we have multiple versions of cost plus, there's like cost plus award fee, cost plus fixed fee, cost or cost sharing, things of that nature. Like I said, we have a lot of different strategies and things, but in general, cost plus contracts, the government will pay you back for all the expenses that were incurred, plus an agreed upon profit margin. So it's less risky to you because you're guaranteed to make a profit because it's already, again, it's already built in upfront. So you're going to know what your profit is even going to be on that contract. So you're guaranteed to make that profit and guaranteed to get back all of the expenses you have. So you don't have to worry about any product overages or anything of that nature, production runs, which is great. It's all set. Downside is, since the government sets the maximum amount, any cost that you do go over, if you don't finish within that time, then you could potentially have to pay that yourself. Now, we do usually have a lot more flexibility in these types of contracting actions, so do keep that in mind. But that's just kind of one of the key ways that we'll do that with cost plus contracts. And this is where you are going to see things for research and development, like large scale research studies. These types of contracts will be a lot more for science-based businesses that maybe have like a joint opportunity or joint partnership with some of our college institutions or things like that. Carnegie Mellon or University of Pittsburgh on our side of the state, obviously Temple and some of the other universities over there. So like, different research is really where that's going to come into play. So if you're a science-based company, do a lot of R&D, you're probably going to land into cost plus contracts quite a bit. So time and material contracts, these are a little different. This is where you're going to find a lot of engineering services. So if you do engineering or different repair, design, maintenance, and things like that, time and material is probably what you're going to end up with. Now, with a time and material contract, the contractor is obligated to complete a project in an agreed upon time frame in the price range that the government pays the time and materials for that it took to finish the job. So this is a little more open-ended. We use these when there's not typically a preferred contracting method by the government. We kind of have a range for everything as far as the time, the price, and all that sort of thing. And then we just pay for what it took you to actually do the work. They're very simple and straightforward to use. The per hour labor rate is already set and calculated. Material cost that you're entitled to, all that stuff is pre-built in, and there's really no downside or benefit either way to you as a vendor. So if you're more efficient, you don't necessarily get any bonuses or anything or any points for being done more quickly, and you're still going to get paid even if you do kind of run over, depending on what it is you're doing. So not a lot to say about those. They're not used as heavily as the firm fixed price and the cost plus contracts, but they do come into play a lot for engineering firms and different design services and things. Now, labor hour contract is just another form of time and material contract. The contractor is obligated to complete the contract in the predetermined time frame. Government determines how much it will cost based on the contractor's hourly labor rate. So again, if you're in those more service-based industries, you're probably going to hit on labor hour types of contracts, just another offshoot of the time and materials, and we only pay for the actual hours worked. And you're not responsible, though, for any cost overruns, which is great, and no real benefit to being more efficient or anything of that nature. So those are the four main types of things you'll see when it comes to going through like an RFP or an RFQ process that we're going to talk about. Those are typically the contracts that are going to be awarded. I can tell you by far the overwhelming majority of the contracts that 99% of our clients will find and end up with will be firm fixed price. We can use these contracts for any type of purchase that we make. So even though they're more likely to be used for some of the industries that I mentioned, that doesn't mean that solely that contract solely has to be used in that industry. So you can be an engineering firm and have a firm fixed price contract. Okay, so it just depends on more of what you're doing, whether you're research and actual, production or selling widgets and things of that nature. So just keep that in mind. Those are some of the really common ones. And then finally, another very, very common item that we use is what's called IDIQ contracts. I'm sure many of you have probably heard of these. Things like GSA schedules, which are General Services Administration Schedule contracts, federal supply schedules, government-wide acquisition contracts, or multiple award contract schedules. And these are extremely popular whenever the government knows that we're going to need to buy something. We know what we're going to need, but we don't necessarily know when we're going to need it or how much. So what we do with these types of contracts is you want to think of these as being on a pre-approved vendor list. So basically, you complete a set of paperwork, get pre-approved to be, one of the preferred vendors that's listed on one of these types of procurement vehicles that I mentioned. And then whenever an agency has a need, they can just reach out to you and buy what they need directly from you using a government credit card. So it's a much more streamlined procurement method. There's not a big back and forth or a lot of vetting of vendors as the awards are made, because you're already pre-approved to be on the list in the first place. So you're vetted up front when you fill out that paperwork and actually submit to get on that pre-registered list, so to speak. And then agencies can just buy from you whenever they need it. So you'll establish like maybe a minimum threshold of what an order will be and a maximum threshold of what you can handle. And as we need something, we'll just purchase from you. So a lot of times with these types of things, they're for many multi-year deals. So you'll see things like maybe 5-year contracts here, 3-year contracts where you get a base plus multiple option years, where we'll just keep you on that list and keep going back to those vendors to purchase what we need as we need it. So it encourages competition, keeps prices down, not only for us, but also for you, reduces your risk because you know that there's exactly what you're going to have to supply the government and everything. You just don't necessarily know when or in what quantity, but you'll have those ranges to kind of fall back on. It's a very streamlined procurement method, so it doesn't cost us a lot of staff person hours administratively trying to go through those different vetting processes and things, because that's all done up front. The downside is once you get awarded on one of these schedules, get awarded to be listed, I should say, and get approved, it still doesn't guarantee you work, or you won't necessarily make immediate sales. And that part is difficult. So you can spend a lot of time and effort getting approved for an IDIQ contract to be listed there, but then until the agency actually needs it or needs your product or service, you're not going to have a sale from that contracting vehicle, even though you're on that schedule. So as opposed to the other types of contracts I mentioned, if we award a firm fixed price contract, that's going to have a definite performance date and a definite end date. This type of contract does not. So you're on that preferred bidders list and agencies can just buy from you. But, if you have a 5-year deal, we may not buy something off of you until year 3. And it's very difficult for projections and planning and sales and marketing and all that sort of thing whenever you're trying to kind of guess and hoping that the government is going to buy stuff from you. So it's a little tricky, but they are highly popular and especially used for commodity off-the-shelf products or services. So we do use streamlined procurement methods whenever we can, just because, again, there are multiple staff members. There's a lot of contracting teams. A lot of effort goes into these things before they even hit the street. So it's just important to kind of understand some of those key contracting types that we have at the federal level. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about types of solicitations, because you can't actually get one of those 5 types of contracts or any of the other 23 methods or contracting strategies we have if you don't know how to respond or find an actual solicitation. Now, with solicitations, similar to the contracts, we actually have 4 main types of federal solicitations. We have requests for quotes, requests for proposals, invitation for bids, and sources sought notices. So understand that, when we're buying things, you have to understand how we actually get to the point where we'll issue you one of those contracts we just talked about. And we do that by issuing a solicitation, which is our notice to the public and to our small business vendors and all vendors that, hey, we have a need for this. We're intending to buy it. We're buying this product or service. So you, at that point, once you get a solicitation, which is the government's offer to you, you respond to that solicitation using your bid package. The bid package is a set of documents to which the bidder would develop a responsive proposal. So we'll put our bid package out saying, here's what we need. We'll outline or list the products or services we're buying. It's then up to you at that point to develop your proposal. If the government accepts your proposal, that's when we'll actually issue you one of the contracts we just discussed. So all contracts at the federal level valued at $25,000 and over are on SAM.gov. SAM.gov actually serves 2 purposes. Not only does it house contracts valued at $25,000 and more for all federal agencies, but it is actually the federal government's vendor registration database. So SAM is the federal system for award management. And if you want to access the federal money, either through a contract or a grant, whether you're for-profit, nonprofit, a single person sole proprietorship, clear up to the Lockheed Martins and the Apples of the world, Microsoft, you have to be registered in SAM.gov to access federal money and programs. So that's always step 1 for us. And your Apex accelerators, which I believe you heard from last week, are experts at the SAM system. They will be very, very helpful with holding your hand and taking you through that SAM registration process. So that's very, very key. So whenever you get a solicitation, before we jump into those different solicitation types, I do want to mention the solicitation number. Now, this blows people away a lot of times because you will see some really crazy solicitation numbers with all these crazy characters in them. And people always ask, why does this look so complicated or convoluted? How do I read this goofy number that the federal government has on there? Well, this is exactly how you read it. So the first 6 digits, it'll be alphanumeric. The first 6 digits in that number will be the buying office or the location of the buying activity, the agency that's making the purchase. So if it's, say, a military base in New Jersey, it could be something like WHK 4521 or 452. You know what I mean? It's going to be a 6-digit number, but it's not necessarily going to be as easy as SBA 123. Obviously, I made that up, so it's not going to just say, DOD 567 or anything like that. The next 2 is going to be numbers. It's just the fiscal year in which the buying is being made, of the purchase, I mean. The next character is going to be a letter. Now, this is the solicitation type or alpha code. And I'm going to explain what that means on the next slide. And then the contract identifier is going to be numbers, and it'll be the last 4 digits. And all that is just the number code of the agency's contract. So like if they're doing a contract in, say, 2023, this number would be 23. They're going to have an alpha code. And then it would be, if it's the first contract of the year, they're issuing on January 1, 2023, it's probably going to be 0001. Then 0002. Now, it's not always going to start over at 1. They could, keep their numbers going, continuing from one year to the next. So you could see some other crazy number there, but that's how that works. And a lot of people look at that number and, kind of wonder what that means and why those digits are there. Well, that's why. And one of the things I really like to always point out when I do this presentation is that alpha code. Now, the alpha code is important because if you look at a solicitation for the first time and you know nothing else about it, but you know how to read that alpha code, it will tell you what sort of offer we're looking for, which will give you a pretty darn good idea about what kind of contract may be attached to said offer. So the alpha code is going to be a letter, and each letter of the alphabet, now most letters, I should say, not every letter is used, but most letters of the alphabet have the type of RFP or the type of solicitation attached to them. So if you see an R, it's going to be a request for proposal. If there's a B there, it's going to be an invitation for a sealed bid. A D would mean it's an indefinite delivery contract. So now you know it's going to be IDIQ. And you can find all those letters at this DFAR subpart 204.70, and there's the link. So just take some time to understand that. Click on that, look at those different letters. Sometimes people think that number is just crazy or it's stupid, it doesn't mean anything, and there is a purpose for it. And you can glean a lot of good information on it. And I have a lot of clients, I train them to do that just so that they can be efficient when they're looking at solicitations. One of the biggest things that'll drive you nuts as a small business owner is you end up in these massive time sucks trying to figure out stuff. And when you know these things, though, it's much simpler when you understand the basics and know what it is you're looking at. So if you know that you typically only do RFPs or RFQs, if you see a letter there for a quote, firm fixed price contract, you don't do R&D contracts, or you're not interested in engineering services or anything where you'd have like a labor and hour contract or time and materials or anything, you can look at that letter and know whether or not that's even something that's going to be worth your time right off the bat. So instead of having to go through and read pages and pages of a solicitation offer, you can efficiently and quickly know whether or not that's going to be fruitful for you to even pursue. So I do like to talk about that. Now, as far as the different procurement or solicitation methods, I should say, request for quotes. Just going to go over each of these real quickly. We'll talk about a couple contracting things as far as how to respond to them, and then we'll take some questions. So RFQs are used by the government to just obtain information and quotations, typically used for standard commodity products and services, and we're simply looking for the most competitive price. So, it's very quick and easy. Quotes are just that. It's just a quote for a product or service, something that we're looking for the most competitive price for. So commodity type items and things of that nature. Now, I do want to spend a minute and talk about the estimated value of the government's need is expected to be under $250,000. RFQs and $250,000, I should say, that number has a really big role in federal contracting. In the federal arena, $250,000 or less is what's known as the simplified acquisition threshold. And remember earlier when I said a lot of times people come to the SBA and they think all these companies, all the big companies, all the large firms come in and take all the money and there's nothing left over for the small businesses. What those simplified acquisition procedures say with that $250,000 threshold there is any contract expected to be valued at $250,000 or less is automatically set aside for small businesses. So a $250,000 contract or a $200,000 contract or $189,000, whatever, that is a big contract for many of our small business clients. And large firms cannot even compete on those. The only time a large company can come in and actually bid on that or get that type of work is if we literally cannot find a small business to fulfill that need we have. At the end of the day, the government's like anybody else. We have needs. We have to fulfill those needs so that we can execute our missions every day. I've said that multiple times now. And, if we can't find somebody, we still have the need for that product or service. So we award it to a small business whenever we can. But at the end of the day, if we can't, then we will open it up and accept bids from large companies. So $250,000, that's a very good sweet spot for a lot of our small business clients, especially when you're first starting out. Not only are they very lucrative contracts for many of you, but can you really handle, at your current capacity, can you handle a multi-year, multi-million-dollar federal deal with the Department of Defense or somebody? A lot of clients think they can, but if you're a staff of 3 or 4 people and the largest contract you ever had was maybe, $200,000, it's going to be really tough to prove to a federal agency that you can handle a 10-year, $5 million open-ended IDIQ contract or some sort of contract like that. Do you have the performance capacity to actually handle a deal that big immediately? You might, but most of our small business clients need to work up to that level. So do keep that in mind, and I do like to mention that just so you understand kind of how that works. Invitation for sealed bids. This is what most people think of when they think about government contracting. And a sealed bid is used when we know exactly what it is we want to buy, and we're going to tell you exactly how we want you to implement that project for us or that service or whatever we're buying. So we're going to tell you how you're going to be evaluated. We're going to tell you how we want you to execute it. We're going to give you all that information, and it's up to you to show that you are the most responsible person, the best performer for that potential award based on the bid specs and criteria that we give you. You'll see these types of contracts awarded to what's called the lowest responsible bidder, some of you may have heard of, or sometimes the lowest price technically acceptable, meaning the person with the cheapest price or firm with the cheapest price that meets our technical specifications. Now that's different from an RFP or request for proposal. A request for proposal is used for an objective-based procurement. So in this type of solicitation offer, we're going to describe in general terms the products or services we need, and it's up to you as that industry expert to tell us how to execute that job. So you'll be responsible not only for telling us how to do it, but actually, doing that performance for us. So we're going to look at the whole bid package in this case. These types of proposals are going to be subject to negotiation prior to award. And that's a little different than what a lot of people think with government contracting, especially at the federal level. And the reason we negotiate before award is because we have to award on overall best value. So for example, say we put out an RFP because we know what we need. We know what we want our end result to be, but we don't have the expertise in the federal government. We don't know how to actually accomplish that mission to get us to what we want done. So that's where we put in general terms, put it out to you. You tell us, here's how I would do it and how you're going to execute it and what it's going to cost us. Now, obviously, with this type of scenario, this type of solicitation, if you have 20 other competitors in your space, we could have 20 different ways to implement this potential product or service. So how do we determine which one is most advantageous to the government and John Q. taxpayer? That's why we're going to negotiate before we award it. We're going to look at different factors. We're going to take a look at things like the delivery time, obviously the price. Do you have any special compatibility issues or anything you can do? Maintenance contracts and agreements. All those types of things are going to play a role in this type of solicitation offer. So, you'll see things sometimes where clients will call us at the SBA and they'll say, hey, I was the lowest bidder. I had the best price on this award, but they awarded it to somebody else for $2 million more. Well, with an RFP, the government has the authority to do that. We have the authority as contracting officers at our agencies to award based on the needs and interests of the government. So if somebody says on an RFP, one solution may take a year and they can do it for $5 million, but somebody else can do it for $1 million, but it's going to take 6 years for them to implement that solution, we can award the $5 million contract if it's in the government's best interest to have that project done in a year. So understand that RFPs are a little more technical. There's a lot more negotiation and everything, and that's why sometimes you'll see solicitations that are awarded to somebody other than the lowest bidder. And finally, sources sought, just want to mention these. Something else that comes up quite a bit at our office is people always ask, how do I get in front of contracting officers? How do I know what needs or opportunities are out there for these agencies before they hit the street? People sometimes say to us, oh, it's like they already have somebody. They have a preferred vendor or somebody that they know that they want to work with. How do I get to be one of those people? And you do that by responding to sources sought notices. Sources sought notices are not official federal solicitations in that they don't have a contract attached to them. This is us and our contracting staff and agencies. This is us doing our market research. We are using these to figure out, do we have small businesses that can perform this project? Can we use some of those streamlined procurement procedures we have to award small businesses contracts? We want to know if you're out there. So we need to hear from industry experts such as yourselves to let us know that, hey, I'm a small business. I can execute this for you. Don't award this contract to a large company. Set this aside for me. I'm a woman-owned small business. I'm certified. I'm in the 8A program. I'm a veteran. I'm a small business. I have self-certification from the SBA or from SAM.gov. I have these available and I can do this work. So we need you to let us know that you're out there. And that's what we use to determine what potential vendors, one of the things we use to determine what potential vendors can actually provide the products and services we need. So always respond to sources sought notices. The great thing about sources sought notices, they're very streamlined. Typically, we're just looking for things like a capability statement, which you'll be having a session on in a few weeks, I believe, which are very, very valuable federal government marketing tools, to where we look for those types of things. But, it's very key that you respond to these whenever possible. Most of them only take most people about 15, 20 minutes, very streamlined response methods. You can email in a lot of cases, and we're just looking for you to say, yes, we have interest in this potential opportunity that you may have down the road. So that agency can use this as justification to then award that contract to a small business or somebody that participates in one of our socioeconomic programs. So understand the sources sought notices. They're very, very critical to helping small businesses break into the federal marketplace. And finally, just a few quick things about how to actually get awarded a contract. What do you actually do when you find that solicitation? You want to read that solicitation offer and make sure you understand all the clauses and provisions and just respond appropriately to what the government is asking of you. That's it. Don't go crazy with this. A lot of times, the biggest reason most small businesses don't get a federal contract, or they struggle for a lot of years trying to get one, is they simply don't follow the outline and the requirements that we have in that solicitation offer. If we tell you we need 10 pages from you or in a specific format, just send back what we ask in that specific format exactly as directed. That's really one of the key things. One of the worst things that I hate, and I used to hate when I awarded contracts. I don't award contracts anymore, but when I used to do it, was having to disqualify somebody on a technicality because they simply did not follow my rules and my directions in the solicitation offer. So it's very, very critical when you respond to these types of things that you're prepared, you understand what you're agreeing to, and you want to understand some of the FAR regulations that I mentioned earlier. So again, FAR Part 13 is where you're going to find things on those simplified acquisition procedures. 15 is sealed bids, or sorry, 14 is sealed bids, 15 contracts by negotiation, and then FAR Part 16 is types of contracts. And that again is where you're going to find all those different contracting strategies and methods we have for all those different types of awards that we make. So again, you can't really get a contract though if you don't understand how to respond to that solicitation and if you don't respond properly. So It's just a matter of just reading and understanding. And if you have trouble, understanding what it is we're asking for, don't be afraid to ask questions. Contracting officers, if it's about contract performance, they usually have a time period as to when you can submit questions in writing, and then they will post those publicly so that everybody is bidding on the same information. A lot of times you can reach out to your Apex Accelerator that you heard from last week. They will actually help you write your proposal. They won't write it for you, but they will go through it with you and help you understand the different regulations and make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that the SBA as a business opportunity specialist that I cannot do for you is help you with a solicitation. The reason being is, even though I don't directly award contracts, I do have approval authority for certain types of contracting actions. And obviously I can't help somebody write a proposal for something that could eventually cross my desk because it is a conflict of interest and have to approve. So bear in mind, with not something we can do at the SBA, so we do rely on our Apex Accelerator partners and our other business partners at our agencies, at our resource partners like our small business development centers, to assist with those types of things. So just understand, it's all a matter of preparing the solicitation, responding appropriately, and then don't ever forget, this is a big one, perform. We're very, very mission focused at the federal level. And just because you finally get a contract awarded, you have to make sure you're doing good quality work. Understand that getting the contract is only half the battle. You still have to show up every day and be that high quality performer that we hopefully hired to do that project or service for us, okay? And always, always remember, only the contracting officer acting within their appointed limits of their warrant can issue your payments and actually change or make any modifications to the contract. Do not just up and do something because somebody at a local job site told you to do it. I actually have a number of horror stories, unfortunately, over the years that I've accumulated. I've been doing this for 20 some odd years now. Where clients have been on a job site and they're doing work, and somebody from the local agency who's not the contracting officer, local project manager will say, just kind of says, hey, yeah, I see you're doing this way. That's nice, but I really wanted this project done this way. And somebody on your team looks at it and says, oh yeah, I can do that. It's going to add $50,000 to the project, but yeah, I'll do it for you. They say, oh yeah, go ahead and do that. And you do that without getting approval from the contracting officer, you are now on the hook for that extra $50,000 because you made an unapproved contract modification. So even though it appears that that person who is there locally, and it could have been something very innocent, they may not have even realized that they didn't have the authority to do it. You think you're being helpful and being nice, and now you're on the hook for $50K. So do not do that. If there's ever anything like that that pops up on a job site, especially if you're in a construction related field or anything, or performance-based, service-based, I should say, absolutely reach out to your contracting officer, get the change or modification in writing. They may tell you no. They may say no, this is not what was agreed upon, but let them fight that battle with that project manager or that agency person. Your job is to execute the contract to the best of your ability, per the terms that you agreed upon when you submitted and got the award. That's it, okay? So just always understand that. We hate it when people get themselves into trouble with that, because unfortunately, there's nothing we can do at the SBA to assist you at that point if something like that happens. So do keep that in mind and always watch out for yourself. And if you have any questions at all, you're not sure who to call, if you have a situation, always reach out to us at the SBA. Business Opportunity Specialists, that's what we're here for. We have not only a very good network of BOSs. There's probably about 70, 80 of us across the country at all the district offices. We also have PCRs, which are procurement center representatives, and other people we can go to within the agency to help you mediate issues with agencies that you may be having on contract performance. All right, so just a few final tips, and then I'm happy to take some questions because I don't want to run out of time here. So always keep your SAM, your socioeconomic certifications up to date if you have them. Find and study some of those contracts, RFPs, RFQs, and just understand what it is that you're agreeing to. That's very, very key. You always want to, chart your competitive framework. Work with your small business development center, your Apex Accelerator. Figure out what agencies are buying what you sell. You don't want to spend a lot of time going after contracts with a specific entity that maybe has a whole team of people already on staff that does what you do. Not every agency is going to buy every single product or service that's out there. So you really need to focus and identify those key customers that are going to have the needs fulfilled by your type of entity in your firm. So select solicitations and contracts that you qualify qualified for, understand what you're doing, and always rely on the guidance of our experts. Like I said, we have tremendous teams. If you got nothing else out of anything I said today, understand that we have a lot of great resources that do this stuff free of charge that will help you work through these processes. So again, whether it's the SBA, one of our funded partners, our Apex accelerators that I have highlighted in red there, our SCORE mentors, our excellent small business development centers like Temple, these people provide great work. They're industry experts. They're small business specialists. They've been through these things. I myself, just to give you a little bit of background about me, I've been in government contracting on all levels of government since about 2003, federal, state, and local. I've competed on things myself and won, many dollars of government funds. I've awarded many millions of dollars in government funds over the years through different contracts and grants and things. So I literally have been on all sides of this in my career, and there are many other people like me that are employed by these different resource partners that understand this stuff to a very high level from all sides. And we get it from the business side as well. So many of us have even been small business owners ourselves at one point or another. So we understand all the pain points and everything that you're going through. And we will do anything we can to help you navigate these things. So with that being said, here's the contact info for the Eastern PA office. Again, I'm in Western PA, and we do work based off of geographic territory. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. If you email me, I will have to send you back, though, to the Philly office. Unless you just can't get an answer there, then in some cases I'm able to help out. But yeah, anything at all, Carmen, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And again, the slides will be provided so that everybody has all this information.
Thank you so much, David. Just super quickly, I posted 3 links in the chat. The first is to registration for future sessions in this series. The second is a link to a survey about today's webinar. It is required by our funders at the SBA. So if everyone could complete that, it takes less than a minute. We would really appreciate it. And last is the Temple SBDC resource document. This has links to recordings of all prior webinars, registration for upcoming webinars, and even access to grants and other funding opportunities. Moving on, we do have some questions in the chat.
Okay,
Is asking, is there such thing as a middleman strategy? Where would you bid on the contract and then subcontract the work out?
Wouldn't call it a middleman strategy, but we actually have subcontracting regulations in the federal acquisition regulations. So subcontracting is completely fine. And we have what's called the limitations on subcontracting, which dictate what percentage of a federal contract you can actually sub out to other vendors or other people that you're working with. So yeah, that's totally fine. There's a lot of different ways to subcontract. Obviously, the traditional prime subcontractor relationship. We have things like teaming arrangements, mentor protege agreements, joint venturing, all kinds of different ways you can go about it, but that's a very viable strategy. Just understand that you can't necessarily, go after a contract and then sub out 100% of the work. The firm that is actually awarded that contract is always going to have a minimum performance percentage, and it's going to depend on your industry and what type of contract it is. So for example, certain construction contracts, you may be able to sub out like 40% of the work. Some may go as high as 60 or 75%, but you're always going to have to self-perform a certain percentage.
Thank you. We have another question. How many applicants get a contract PM on the first try?
Contract PM, do you mean a prime contract or just get awarded their first contract? I can tell you on the first try, not many. Unfortunately, it can take some time. And when I say time, okay, on the first try. Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, it can take a couple of years in a lot of cases. Not too many just show up and get their first contract right off the bat. I've had some clients over the years that, yeah, a contract has literally fallen out of the sky and smacked them in the head on the way down, and they've gotten exceptionally lucky. Those people are the exception, though, not the rule. Another thing to keep in mind is that contracting at the federal level, we typically never want to be anybody's first customer. So if you are a small business startup, federal work really isn't for you right off the bat. In some programs like the 8A program and certain types of contracting actions that we do, we actually want to see a minimum of 2 years of successful performance in the commercial sector or with other levels of government, which would be like state, local, university level, before we'll award you that first federal contract. So again, we are kind of risk averse in that way. As regarding a percentage or anything, I really couldn't even venture a guess. Not too many clients that I've ever had just get a contract right off the bat the first time they try it. Learning to write a contract and respond to it properly can take some time. Learning how to do that narrative, how to budget properly, how to negotiate the right way. It can take a little bit of time to really ramp up and sort of understand those FAR regulations to kind of see where you can fit and where you can be competitive. The great thing is, one of the things that's really, really cool is at the federal level, if you're ever not awarded a contract, is in a lot of cases, you can request a contract debriefing. Now, I'm a big fan of that because, they'll help you understand during that debriefing where your bid was deficient. So even if you don't get your first contract or two, definitely request that debriefing, and the contracting officer will explain to you, what the problems were with your bid. Were you simply not competitive on price? Did you not have the proper capacity they didn't feel? Were you not sound enough financially? Because something we don't do, just to mention this too, is we don't typically front people money. So if you're in an industry where it's common to get money down up front to get the equipment or get your supplies and then perform the work, that's not going to work at the federal level. So you won't get paid until you actually get the contract and start doing and performing the job. So do keep that in mind, but definitely request that debriefing whenever you can.
Thank you. Another question in the Q&A. Which type of contract should a DEI intellectual content creation company apply for, and where federally? And they said, great job, thumbs up.
Oh, thank you for the thumbs up. Can you repeat that first part again, though, Carmen?
Yes. Which type
Content
of
creation?
contract should
Okay.
a DEI intellectual content creation company apply for, and where federally?
Oh, that is one that would take a little bit of research. Probably more than likely, though, off the top of my head, more than likely you're going to want to look at some of the R&D type contracts. We have things that are called SBIRs and STTRs, Small Business Innovation Research and Small Technology Transfer Program. Those might be the best opportunity for you right off the bat. I have not looked at that industry lately as far as an industry sector to see if that's something we're buying a lot of at the moment. So I can't answer that live, unfortunately, but I'd be happy to take a look at that and shoot you an email afterwards if you could either get in touch with me or send work through Carmen or whatnot. I can get in touch with my counterpart in Eastern PA and see if we can get you an answer on that one.
Thank you. Another question. And just throwing this out there, we do have 3 minutes left. So at 5, I am going to cut the questions, but we have 2 more in the chat right now.
Sure.
How do we get a hold of you guys to assist us with setting out company? Also, is there a way we can find, quote unquote, the need, then supply the government instead of offer what we think will work? Question mark.
Yeah, okay. Well, as far as getting a hold of us, sba.gov, on the slides, under the resource sides, I had the Find Your Local District Office link whenever Carmen sends those out. So just click that link. It'll take you to our area locator. Just type in your zip code and it will spit out all of the offices that are closest to your location. So the district office that's in your area will be happy to work with you. We're not very hard to find. Just go to that link and type in your zip and it'll tell you who's closest to you. As far as okay, what was that? The second part about supply the government instead of offer what we think will work. All contracts, all solicitations that come out are always based on need. So typically you're going to know what agency obviously is going to need and when they're going to need it. The only time the need is a little more obscure is if you're solely focusing on those IDIQ contracts. So those indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contracts. So really you just want to kind of work with your Apex accelerator, have them do some general marketing research for you about what agencies are buying what you sell, which is another great thing about federal work. We have this information readily available where you can see past contracting histories, past procurement opportunities. You can find potential competitors. You can see all this information. A lot of it is on sam.gov or maybe other websites. Your Apex Accelerator counselor will be able to assist you with that. They'll help you do that marketing research and identify what specific opportunities, what agencies are going to need. And again, anytime a solicitation comes out, there's already been a ton of research on the back end before that solicitation even hits the street to figure out what are the needs of the government. That solicitation is to fulfill the need that we have. So I hope that answers that. But if not, feel free to let me know and I can try to take that a different direction.
All right, and this will be our final question. If a proposal is rejected, can we request a debrief to understand the strengths and weaknesses?
Oh, yep, absolutely. I think I mentioned most of that already. Now, not every contract is going to have a debrief. Most do, but certain types of solicitations or certain agencies do not. So do keep that in mind, but always request it whenever you can. Worst case scenario, bring the proposal to your local BOS. I'm not opposed. Like I said, I can't look at things before they're awarded due to the authority I have in the approval of certain things. But if you want to sit down with me after the fact, we'll kind of go through some things and I'll take a look at the solicitation offer and I'll take a look at your response. I mean, I used to award these things, so I am more than happy. I do that for my clients fairly regularly if they need it. I'm more than happy to do that. And again, your Apex accelerators will kind of tell you where you more than likely were deficient in that bid. Okay. But most agencies are happy to do it. Certain contracts, though, do not have that regulation attached to them. But we will try to do that for you whenever we can.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, David. And that wraps up our session for the night. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I hope everyone has a lovely rest of their week.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.